Hey Alana, how you doing today?
Good, Kayo. How are you?
I'm doing great. Good to see you. How's your day been so far?
So far, so good. It's quite early here, so not a lot to not a lot to say.
Not much has happened yet. Not so this is the first
No.
event for your day. Excellent.
Oh
Excellent.
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
so let the viewers know who you are, what you do, and why you do it, Alana.
I am a dating coach. So my full name is Alana McKenzie Page. I'm a dating coach and a singer and as well. But my dating coaching is due to the fact that I struggled so much with dating and after moving through sort of a transformation, we could say, of becoming someone who did not struggle as much with dating and had, in fact, a really incredible time meeting men and dating men, I started to realize that other women were also experiencing what I had been experiencing, only meeting men who didn't want to commit or who were kind of wishy-washy in the way that they dealt with me, others. Um, so I wanted to help change that. And I wanted other women to be able to do what I had done with my own love life and find their power to have what they want in love and be able to go after that.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. Yeah, and before we talk more about some of your struggles to do with relationships, I want us to go back and look at the point in time where you were deciding that you wanted to get into like a relationship coaching and your kind of mindset at that period in time. What was going through your mind at that time, and what was your kind of thinking when you were thinking like, I want to actually do this and help people with their relationships?
Yeah, I was a teacher at the time, and I didn't want to just teach for the rest of my life. And I was a language teacher, and I realized I wanted to teach something maybe deeper. I don't know. I had like a bunch of questions about teaching languages and globalization and all that. And I wanted to teach something that was going to change the world for in what I believe would be like a definite positive impact. Um, and to me, relationships seem like the sort of most obvious big way to change the world. Like that's everybody's day to day is relationships. And and it does seem that particularly for women that relationships really affect our lives. Like that's kind of usually the grounding point for a woman's life. And I thought, I could teach that instead. And I was planning to go back to school and become a therapist and, do that whole route. And the pandemic hit, and I didn't want to spend like 5 years online in school doing that at the time. So I instead did some other certifications and just began talking about this and began um, creating this world, I guess. Then I wrote a book, The Art of Feminine Seduction, based on all of my research and the work that I had been doing with clients. And my own personal journey. So I wrote my own personal journey into this book rather than, sort of use someone else's story, because that felt a little uh, not in integrity. So lay out the whole journey and the system for becoming this woman who is not just able to, land a man. So it's actually not about that, but really like feel amazing in relationship and enjoy dating and get sort of to experience the full spectrum of what it means to have an amazing love life, like a really great love life, and feel like they can find love that will last.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, I would even say that relationships are a major part of the human experience, like not just for women, because
Oh
you was
yeah.
mentioning like it's more to do with women, but I'd say like for everybody, it's a major part of our experience in life, the way we relate to other people, intimate ways and other ways as well. So
Oh,
yeah,
yeah. No, no, it's definitely for humans. It just seems that women are sort of disproportionately affected by relationship's not going well, we could say. Like
Right.
there's sort of like a um yeah, like it could ruin your whole day just to have like one issue in a relationship. Not even just your primary like partner. It's like, you know, your work colleagues, like they say something and then just like women, have a really hard time with that. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
often in general.
yeah.
So, yeah. But it's definitely core to the human experience for sure. I would absolutely agree.
Yeah, yeah. Talking about like, different struggles in relationships. You was talking about some of your previous relationships were kind of a wishy-washy, and those were kind of struggles that you were having. Can you talk more about what made them wishy-washy, and what were the kind of issues that you were going through, and how you were able to overcome those issues to get to where you are now?
Yeah. So there was a lot going on, and at the core, it took me like 10 years to realize this kind of, because I was just kind of going along, wondering like what was wrong with men, right? Or like, why, like feeling like the reason I couldn't find love was probably because I was ugly or something like that. Like I was believing really surface level ideas that I got from like TV and books about what love was supposed to look like, and what it should feel like to date someone and fall in love. And I was like going for this experience and not finding it. Like I was trying really hard to like have a rom-com romance, right? Where it was like he sees me from across the room and he just like knows I'm the one, and he walks towards me and we just have this magical encounter. And I was just disappointed over and over again, right? So the first guy that I like fell in love with as an adult was already in love with someone else, right? Like he was not available to fall in love with me, and I didn't really know that at the time, right? I didn't like fully know that and did not have the communication skills to like talk about that, but it was available it was obvious from the beginning that he wasn't available. And I still was like hanging around waiting for him to still fall for me, right? Like I was just like, he'll change his mind, right? If he likes me enough, he's going to change his mind. And that's the story that I played out for the most part over and over again, was like, if he wants me enough, he will change his mind, right? He'll start pursuing me. He will um try harder, right? He'll put in more effort. He'll show up better. And that didn't ever happen in those connections. Um, and so what I learned is that I had to show up differently. First of all, like I had to, um, in some cases, try less hard in terms of not putting in effort to these men who didn't want to show up, right? Like I didn't, I just had to stop trying with these men who like didn't want to be there. And and then I also had to overcome some of my fears around self-disclosure. Is what the fancy word for it is, but it's like being vulnerable, right? Like saying what I wanted. That was for me, I did the feminine energy journey, right? So for me, I had to get really in touch with my own desire and how to express that, like what to say to a man to actually like let him know what I wanted. And that was magic, because it turns out that men who want to have amazing relationships care about what you want and they want to hear it. And that was just a skill I was lacking, essentially, is I did not know how to do that or feel comfortable doing that. And so when I began to implement that tool in my dating life, like it's like the doors just opened, right? It was like suddenly men liked dating me, and I liked dating men because they were giving me exactly what I wanted. um, and and then there were other sort of like there was an unraveling of other lessons too along the way for me. But that was one of the definitely like a primary lesson for me, was like, yeah, the way you show up to dating also affects the results you get in dating.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Now, it sounds a lot like, like you're mentioning, the sitcoms that you're watching created a fairy tale in your mind, and obviously, like in reality, the relationships that you're having wasn't fitting with that kind of a fairy tale with that particular person. So once you realized that, and you started to realize that it was more about the self-value that you have for yourself, in order to allow people to be attracted to you once they see that value, and if they don't show that they're interested, that you need to focus on that self-value. What was that period like for you when you came to that realization? Because obviously that wasn't your mindset before, but you made this
Mhm.
realization and you had to adjust. What was that process of adjustment like for you in that period?
Yeah, so I came to it through like an intense heartbreak. Like that's what I had to go through was just like really like life soul crushing heartbreak. Um, and get to this place where I even was available for this idea of like I have to do something different. Like I cannot keep doing this. You know, like that was the first step was it can't be like this and I don't know what the answer is. Like I it was like a super moment of humility, like we could say, right? Of just like I don't know, I surrender, I you know, like what I am doing is not the thing. Like this is not working. Um and I spent several months uh, doing very intensive research. I got into a lot of like dating coaching advice and also relationship stuff in general. So like Esther Perel and Stan Tatkin and Helen Fisher. I also really was into like the anthropological view of attraction and how people fall in love. And um, that research highlighted for me all of these instances I had had with men where I had uh, not made the wrong decision, but you know, made a choice where that didn't help. Like it was like, oh, I see what I did wrong, right? Like I see what why that didn't work. I see why I did not succeed in finding love. And at the end of that period, my whole life fell apart. So it was like a 6 month period of just doing this kind of casual research in my own time, and then my whole life fell apart. Like I was living in another country, my visa was done, the company I was working for hadn't gotten me a new one. It's like you got to leave, like say goodbye to your house, say goodbye to your friends, like get out of the country. Your work is done. So, uh, so I, you know, sort of like went to a new country to like figure out what I was doing next. And one of the things that emerged was like, well, why don't you try dating with all of the knowledge that you've now gained? Like, why don't you try dating with this new mindset is a great way to say that, where it's like, you know, I get to make new choices. I don't have to say yes to men who obviously are not going to pursue me. Um, and I began dating and the first couple people I met weren't incredible, but what was different is that I said no. So that was my first lesson was like, yeah, actually when it's not good, I have to say no, even though it's uncomfortable. Like that, you know, my mindset was like, even though it's uncomfortable and it's kind of hard, I can do it. Like I can just say no, thank you and walk away.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and then the third guy I met was incredible. Like it was just like, wow, this is amazing. You know, like this is the kind of person I've been waiting to meet. Um, and you know, I was abroad, I was traveling. That didn't last. Like it didn't, it's not who I married. Um, but you know, that sort of like opened my eyes to what was available. And from there, you know, I moved to another country and then had my first kind of relationship. And that, you know, it was like it was just unraveling and I was just learning so much about how good relationships could be at that point. So my mindset was like day and night. Like I talk about this as like a 180-degree turn because it was really like vastly different. Like it's basically before I had a bunch of scarcity around men and love and the possibility of relationship. And what I entered into was like just this hugely abundant mindset of like, there is so much attraction and sexiness and enjoyment and pleasure and goodness to be found in love. And then, and then I found this relationship and it was like, and here, here is this man who's incredible, who would love to be with me. And that, yeah, I mean, that was right. That's why I chose to do this work, because that was definitely the most impactful shift in my entire life, right? It's like that was life changing to experience that shift. Like to go from this woman who like could barely get a date, and when she did, it was not good, to being someone who was like just having a great time, like just having a really amazing time in dating. And then love was it was so powerful. Like I just like I just had that feeling like I want this for every woman who wants a relationship. Like that is incredible. Like that is so cool.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, like it was like the move to the new location gave you a new perspective and a new outlook, and from there it was like a different you, like so to speak, a new journey that you kind of embarked on. Yeah, excellent,
Totally.
excellent. Yeah,
Yeah.
like a lot of people, like they kind of search for like what you were searching for, or try to make a relationship work, and were going through the same kind of struggles that you were going through, where they weren't getting what they needed, and they kind of tend to focus more on their career at some point because they're not getting what they want from relationships, and they immerse themselves in something they feel like they can control, which is the
Yeah.
progress of their career. So
Yeah.
upon doing that, they start to distance themselves from their intimate side, and it comes to a point where they now don't know how to bridge the gap again with their intimacy because they focus so heavily on their professional life. So, in your opinion, how can they start to bridge that gap again with their intimate side once they've neglected it for so long for their professional side?
Yeah, I love that you say that. It's so interesting to me that we've like created this distinction, right? It's like you can focus on this or that. Um, and we don't seem to view like relationships as just a holistic part of life in sometimes. Like it's just that it does. People are like, I'm choosing this instead of that. Instead of being like, you know what, I get to have a full life that's full of all the things I love. Um, and that's really the attitude that I would get back to, is like actually, there's that like tongue-in-cheek thing that came out of the 80s, I think, where it's like, can she have it all? And I would say like that's such a negative way to think about it. It's like, well, can you have a life you love? And the answer there is yes. So the mindset shift first is I get to have a life I love and I get to have the things in it that I love. Just very basic, right? It's just like, yeah, that's the life I want, so I get to have it. Um, and one of the things that was different for me, one of the like before and afters for me, is that I previously thought finding love was just luck. Like I thought, I'm just unlucky in love, right? That's why I haven't found love. And what I discovered through all the work that I did and have done now is it's just not luck. It's skills. Like you need the skills of dating and relationship, and implementing a good strategy basically is like the corporate way to say that. But it's like actually um, right. So becoming someone who is comfortable receiving romantic attention. That's like baseline, right? So if you're out in public, that way you can receive romantic attention in public. Or on dating apps, you can receive that attention. This is so important for women and can be really hard. Um, so but back to your question, it's like just developing those awarenesses and abilities it's learnable. And it's something that you would have you do that in order to create space in your life for a relationship, and then to create the end result of having a relationship. And it's not just luck,
Yeah,
right? It's
yeah,
like, yeah. I
yeah,
used to be so jealous of these women who just seemed to always be able to find a relationship. And I just thought, like, what is wrong with me? Like, there is something, like, that's why I was just like, I am just too ugly. Like, I'm obviously unattractive, because it doesn't work for me. But it's like they actually just knew these skills, and they we're open basically to what it takes to build that relationship, the vulnerability and all of the stuff that it takes to just to like be seen as a romantic potential and then be like chosen for a relationship.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. Now, sometimes, people go through this journey of like self-discovery, like you went through, and they become more open once they realize their power is within them, that they can like control their outcome by their decisions that they make and how they interact with people. And like once they realize this, they start looking at like, well, maybe like there's different type of relationship dynamics that are more suitable for me. It doesn't have to be one way. So they start looking at things like monogamy versus non-monogamy and seeing like what is more suitable to them. So in that context, what is your viewpoint on monogamy versus non-monogamy?
Yeah, I think the way you said it is perfect. It's like for different people, different things are just like better suited. Um, I'll just talk about some cool Helen Fisher research for a second. She found that in indigenous cultures, often that are like still intact, like the ones that are basically untouched, there is often this dynamic where people pair bond, right? So it's sort of like the human instinct um, is to pair up, basically, like create a primary attachment relationship is the fancy word for that, right? And then usually in these cultures, there is sort of like culturally acceptable straying, right? Like culturally acceptable cheating. That, like people have this understanding that you don't just have actually just one sexual partner, but you do have a partner, like you have a life partner. Um, and then those cultures have all of these different, rules about how that works, that vary to some degree. So her theory is that that is probably the ancient human way of of creating family, we could say, right? It's like, I mean, there's usually also a larger like tribal aspect to these communities, right? It's so the way we live right now is just like so different. The city life is like not natural. Um, but that as an idea is very interesting to me as like that humans had this knowledge of like partnership is important, right, to survive, like it's important to have a partner, and we're also like animal sexual, like all of this other stuff going on. So that's in the space right now, it's like that kind of like we know there's cheating in every culture. Like that is something that is universally human. Does not matter is that we have cheating in relationships and we have taboos against cheating. Like that's what we have as humans. Um so I think this new sort of polyamory movement is kind of looking at that in a really interesting way. Personally, it's not for me at this point in my life. I do think like city life is really different, modern life is really different and complex, and there's a lot going on. And just for the emotional work that you have to do in order to be in a healthy polyamorous relationship, um, that's a choice. Like you have to be making that choice, and that's like very uh brave, I would say. And I don't want to do that. So it's like everybody's got to make their choice, right? Like you have to choose and then be honest, right? Like you have to choose and then hopefully not be in that cheating, dishonest section of humanity. Um, and if you want to try things, try it openly rather
Right.
than lying to someone who is your partner, right?
Right. Yeah, yeah. Speaking about like being honest, there are people that would rather be honest than be cheating and things like that. So they want to if they're interested in opening up their relationship, they'd rather have that conversation with their partner. But they're worried that like if they were to have that conversation, their partner's going to take it the wrong way. They're going to feel like, oh, there must be something missing in our relationship. That's why you're bringing it up. Do you think there's any truth to that? Do you think there's necessarily something missing in a relationship if somebody wants to open it up?
There might be. Yeah, it's definitely possible that there is. Um, and it could also just be that what's missing is novelty, right? Or like what's missing is um, some kind of self-exploration for that person. So yeah, it's really hard to say, and I can totally understand the, hesitancy to open up a conversation like that because it is hard, and there in relationship there are so many conversations that are can be really hard. Like that's one thing I think about marriage now. I'm married now, and I think about that sometimes. I'm like, wow, I never thought in my life I would have to have that conversation. Like I never I never thought that that would be a conversation I would have in my life. So I do believe that part of long-term relationships is having conversations like that that feel maybe a little scary or feel a little bit vulnerable. Um, and it can be hard. Like absolutely, it can be really hard.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I don't know what every single person should do. However, I think there's a lot to be gained from opening the conversation in a safe way, right? Like not just springing it on someone when they're busy, but really having the conversation because maybe there's something in your example, for example, it's like maybe there's something missing from the relationship that could be filled in, right? It's like there's not necessarily like a this is the only thing that we can do in a situation, but maybe there's something that the couple could figure out together and create together.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Now, sometimes people don't even have that conversation and they'll just go and cheat anyway. They'll just step out of the relationship and do what they felt to do. And sometimes they carry around a sense of guilt about what has happened. And they come to a point where they now want to express what has happened to their partner and come clean to kind of get it out in the air, out in the open. Now, some people will say,
Mhm.
well, if my partner has cheated on me, that's it, it's over. Like he was unfaithful or she was unfaithful, and there's no way back from that. And some people will be
Yeah.
like, okay, this has happened. Let's sit down, let's talk about it, let's figure out where we went wrong, and maybe we can rebuild from this point. So, what is your viewpoint on like forgiveness in when infidelity happens? Do you feel like they can ever rekindle to where they were before and continue, or do you feel like they're just going to be tolerating each other from then on because of what has happened?
It really depends. Yeah, it can go all of those ways for sure. I think forgiveness is an incredibly powerful tool, just in general in life. Um, I I'm a big fan of forgiveness. And cheating like that, I mean, that is such a violation on so many levels. Emotionally, physically. If you've got kids, it's like someone sacrificed your family, like the betrayal is so deep. Um, it's hard to say if you can go back from that, right? Like potentially no, right? Potentially no, you can't. Um, and that's sort of the risk in in this situation, right? That's the risk in first somebody straying, right? And then revealing that again.
Yeah.
Um, so um it really depends on the kind of relationship you want to have, right? Is this we could talk about integrity again. Like it's like there are all kinds of places for integrity, honesty, um, and intimacy, right? As intimacy as like disclosing the truth about yourself to another person, not necessarily like sexual, but how deep do you want to go with that person, right? Like that's the question that everybody has to answer for themselves.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, now looking at like, brand new relationships now, when people get into a brand new relationship, they start to feel a lot of butterflies, there's a lot of chemistry going on, and they really want to like immerse themselves in this new person. But, some people, when they immerse themselves, they start to lose their sense of self in that process. Even if they've been on a journey before where they found their sense of self, they finally find someone and start to lose that sense of self. So, how
Yeah.
can people immerse themselves in a brand new relationship or after they find it? Without losing their sense of self in the process.
Yeah, first you have to cultivate your sense of self. And for me, this is another thing we could say that happened to me, right? Is like that was this thing that I used to do is I would get into a dating relationship and then kind of become dependent on their attention to feel good. And so what I had to do was cultivate my sense of self, which is where the feminine energy stuff came in for me, was like, because actual spiritual feminine energy isn't about like getting a pedicure and like looking cute. It's about having that center in your sexual energy inside yourself. And so for me, I had to really cultivate that and like work to be able to become centered in myself. It's like he's not texting you back. That's okay because you're a human and you live over here in this body. And like I had to like really practice being able to stay centered in myself. Um, and uh, that is actually one of the big pieces that changed dating for me because you are more attractive if you are able to stay in your lane, right? Like you are more confident and you're more attractive if you're able to stay centered in yourself.
Yeah.
And the kind of long-term relationships I believe are like interdependent. So rather than independent or codependent, we're looking for interdependence, which is where, it does matter how your partner feels. Like that does affect your day. Like it does matter how, your long-term committed relationship person is doing. Like that matters. And you still need to be able to stay with yourself, right? Pursue your own interests, um, create your own joy in life, like have your own friendships. Like that is super important. And so I think it's foundational, personally, to be able to do that, staying centered in yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what I would definitely say.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Yeah, so Alana, like, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for everything that you've shared. Where could people find you, find out more about you, and find out more about what you do?
Thanks so much, Kayo. I am online everywhere as Sovereign Dating. Website is www.sovereign-dating.com. So sovereign-dating.com. And on social media everywhere, Sovereign Dating, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. And my book, The Art of Feminine Seduction, is available wherever books are sold.
Excellent, excellent. And for the viewers, all of the links to her socials will be in the description, so you can contact Alana and find out more about what she does. Once again, Alana, thank you so much for coming on. Any final words before we wrap up?
Mainly just thank you so much for having me. And I loved your questions. It was so insightful just to hear you talk about the questions. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome, Alana, and thank you.